Check out the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer, the best in the business. It's going to be great.
Everyone, welcome to the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey, streaming now here on Full Press Hockey Podcast, YouTube. Get it live, Northeast Streaming Sports on the Roku channel, Spitballin' Sports, Mad Radio Sports, also the Full Press Radio Network. Also get it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, now including Podbean. Back for another episode, and we're talking about moving out. Yes, you heard it off the top. Billy Joel moving out. That's what the Arizona Coyotes are doing. They are relocating, and that's our top story here on Around the NHL, that they are relocating to Salt Lake City. This has been in the works for some time now. And look, the NHL has tried their best to make Arizona hockey work. They have. They've done everything from trying to own the team themselves, trying to find the land, trying to get the building, trying to make deals with other owners in other sports to get this thing to work. Look, hockey in the desert, it's produced great players in NHL. Austin Matthews being the poster boy for this thing. You know, you got Matthew Nyes in there as well. They've drafted young, great players too that are coming in the league, Logan Cooley, and they have a good young team. Unfortunately, you cannot be playing out of a college arena for 5 years before your next building's coming, if it's coming, because look, we saw land bids go in Tempe, gone to the wayside because taxpayers don't want to pay for it. You're seeing an auction bid that's taking place June 27th. I think that date's too long for the National Hockey League. It was reported earlier in this week, shout out to Frank Saravelli, that the NHL was working on two schedules next year, one with the Coyotes in Salt Lake City and one with them still in Arizona. And I think the owner, Ryan Smith, when he tweeted out early in the week, what do you like the name of the new Utah team to be called? What are some of the suggestions asking that? You knew something was up, and reports started to trickle out that Ryan Smith had been meeting with Alexander Morello, the Coyotes owner. They were meeting with the league. A lot of people were making comments saying they were declining on the situation. A spokesperson from the NHLPA declined to comment on this situation when asked about it. So, look, Coyotes' reign in the desert has been up and down, but it's been marred by negative press and a lot of negative PR because they just can't win the big game, and they can't win in the playoffs, right? Their best run came in 2012. They went to a Western Conference final. They lost to the LA Kings in 5 games. It was barred by controversy, but they lost. But they never built off of it, right? They get there initially, 96, 97. They go to the playoffs. 6 of their first 7 years, 5 of their first 6 years there. And, you know, they have some success, but they never build off of it. And then you miss the playoffs. Pretty much most of the 2000s, you missed the playoffs. You're a bad hockey team. You get a couple of runs in there from 2009-10 to 2011-12. And then you haven't made the playoffs since the bubble. And that's it. And this team is playing out of a college arena. And that's not good enough, right? That is just not good enough to win in the National Hockey League and to play in the National Hockey League. We saw the Islanders play in a Barclays Center. We've seen the Winnipeg Jets where they play, but they went back to Nassau to the Islanders. But this is not up to standards. And then when you're seeing what the Oakland A's are going to do, you can't have that for Major League Baseball. And the big proponent in this is, look, the NHLPA gave in to a lot to Gary Bettman when it came to salary cap, to the CBA and all of this, and Donald Fear, and we know what happened with Bob Goodenour. They now have Marty Walsh there as the executive director of the NHLPA. They have better players running this thing, and they're understanding and they're hearing from the players, especially the visiting teams, the situation. It's not up to NHL standards. This is a pros game. They have all these different, and then you go to there and you got to like walk to your own locker room and get dressed outside. Like the poor conditions. It's a great view. It's fun to see, fun atmosphere for the first year, but the novelty is going to wear off, and they had to leave. Like there's just so much around this, and look. He's gonna Ryan Smithy, Utah Jazz, the group in Salt Lake City that wants billions of dollars for this thing, plus the relocation fee, which is gonna get split among the other 30 two owners now, and 31 owners, I should say, because he's taking over the Coyotes, and we still don't know what that name is going to be, and we still don't know when that announcement's going to happen. But the team was informed Friday night before their game against the Edmonton Oilers that they were relocating, and that their last game will be Wednesday night, April 17th at Mullet Arena in the state of Arizona, because they are moving. And this was kind of the timeline, right? You go back to when the Atlanta Thrashers left for Winnipeg 2.0. It was kind of around a similar time. That happened in May. This is happening a lot sooner because they need to get things situated for the draft. They need things to happen next year. Got to get ticket sales. They got to let people know what's going on. They got to renovate the building. There are a lot of moving parts still to this, but they have to get this done. And the Coyotes needed to get out of Arizona. I said there's too much of a negative stench. Too many owners, not enough good management. Remember, the league took over the Coyotes because ownership couldn't pay players, so the league took it over. And then when they moved to Glendale, that's far out. It's like Canada for the Ottawa Senators fans. The drive was bad. No one's driving there on a Tuesday, and the team's not good. So their back rent is bad. Taxes, and then the ownership, it doesn't pay the players. They don't pay enough of those players. They're taking on dead contracts to get to the salary cap floor. Everything you don't want in a franchise. And again, hockey in the desert can work, but it can work to a certain point because the funding and the financial backing isn't there. And I think the Arizona Coyotes, if and when, and I think the league will go back to Arizona, and I think it jumps Atlanta and Houston for expansion because it's an untapped market. And like I said off the top, youth hockey is great out there. The travel teams are great out there. They're producing good hockey. It can be Tampa West. It can be. But they got to win, and they got to capitalize off their wins. But there's too much negativity around the Arizona Coyote brand right now for them to be successful. And it's the arena, it's the owner, it's management, it's guys not getting paid, players not wanting to go there. Yes, former players live there, but again, maybe it's just not a great hockey market. I don't know. They've been there a long time, and they just haven't been able to capitalize on everything. And I know teams, may not win the Stanley Cup, but to not get out of the first round and only get one Western Conference final appearance, I mean, this is pretty bad for this team. And you feel bad for Shane Doan. He was there with the Winnipeg Jets for one season, and then he goes down to Arizona. His son played 11 games and now is going to Utah. And look, Utah loves hockey. We saw what the Olympics were like 2002. They want hockey. It's going to be good. Again, details still being worked out. Announcements still being worked out. But the Arizona Coyotes are moving. They're relocating to the Salt Lake City air, high above another altitude city similar to Denver. So they're moving from the desert to the mountains. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be interesting. Definitely a place I'd like to check out for sure. But again, management-wise, marketability-wise, I think this is good for the league. And, it's something that needed to happen a long time ago. Again, there wasn't as much pushback back then. The league kind of dictated everything, kind of were helping the Coyotes along with this. And then they got to the point where, it's like, all right, what are you doing? Because it doesn't seem like you have a plan anymore. And like I said, and you can go check out another site that I write for. I'm going to drop it here, NHLrumors.com. But, it's going to be up on Full Press Hockey as well. I said they need to follow the Minnesota North Star model, the Minnesota Wild model. When the North Stars left, they were in a similar situation, poor attendance. They did go to a Stanley Cup final, but that really didn't help them. It was a miracle run, and then they lost to Pittsburgh, and they got shellacked, and still poor attendance. They couldn't find a new building, couldn't get the funding for a new building in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. They go through legislation. They make sure that the building is used for the amateur athletics so they don't have to pay as much back. And now the Wild are a thriving franchise. Yeah, it started off bad with the old expansion draft. But they've built a steady franchise there. And that building hosts state high school championships. It hosts the Frozen Four. It's going to host the World Junior. So they've done things right in Minnesota, get the ownership right, get the infrastructure right. And I think that's something the Arizona Coyotes need to do if they want a new franchise. And I'm talking about Arizona. Find something, find a building, fix it, show the league the infrastructure is in place, because we know the league wants to go back there, and they're going to go back there. Obviously, expansion is a hot topic. Is it going to be Atlanta? Is it going to be Houston? It all came down to the Arizona Coyotes first, and then everything else would fall into place. My view on this is my head explodes every time I talk about this, but I think you have to wait. You have to let the Utah stuff now settle. You have to let that Coyote stuff settle. Let the market reset. Get your 32 teams set. Get your salary cap over 90 million, close to 100 million. Get things in place before you start adding teams. Because the one thing you notice with adding teams is right now you see some of these Western teams only twice a year. If we add a couple of more teams, you may only see them once a year, and that's not great for the product either. So there's going to be time with this. They're always listening. They've had meetings with everybody, Atlanta, Houston, and obviously the big meeting with Utah, and they're doing it under the cloak of the Stanley Cup playoff race, the play-ins. Like, as I've said, and we've said on multiple podcasts here on the Full Press Hockey Podcast and the Full Press Radio Network, the big thing is don't expand the Stanley Cup playoffs. You don't need to, right? You don't need to. Why? Why bother? Because you're getting it right now, right? We're having great races in the Eastern Conference. I think this is the best it's been, right? And this is the perfect reason why you don't need to. The Islanders, 89 points. The Penguins are at 87 points, 86 points. The Washington Capitals, 85 points. Detroit Red Wings, 85 points. Philadelphia Flyers, 85 points. Like, there's a big race in the Eastern Conference for 2 spots. And if the Islanders can get 1 or 2 more points, they're locked in to the 3rd spot in the Metro. Probably going to play Carolina Hurricanes, though they could still play New York Rangers, which would be pretty awesome. So let's just review it. Islanders, 89 points. Big win against Montreal. Pittsburgh, 86 points. Washington, Detroit, and Philadelphia, all 85 points. And Detroit's lost 2 massive play-in playoff type games to Washington, to Detroit now. Like, they got to find a way to finish the season strong. They got to win all their games. They play Montreal twice. That's not going to be easy. Philadelphia and Washington play each other. Detroit, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders play each other. So, again, playoff play-in type games. Winners moving on. Losers going to the golf course. The Flyers go on an 8-game losing streak. The Islanders go on a 6-game winning streak to get to them 3rd into the Metro, which who would have thought that weeks ago? Who would have thought Detroit would not be in here after what they were doing? And then Larkin goes out, and here we are. So do you say to yourself, okay, so who's going to get in? So hard to judge, right? So hard to judge. We don't know. The Islanders seem like a lock, but anything can happen, right? I think 1 or 2 more points, they get in. They got the best odds right now. Pittsburgh's odds have jumped up as well. Seneca Sportsbook in Buffalo area. Thanks, shout out for their odds as well here on the podcast. But you look at it, right, and you say to yourself, okay, so if the Islanders get in, they're going to be a tough opponent. But Carolina's kind of owned them. Samir Varlamov's playing well. Kyle Palmieri, Bo Horvat. You got Matthew Barzal. The big question is going to be Dobson's injury. Sorokin's there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Islanders, but they got a big game against the Rangers. They get a win there. They're pretty much locked in. And then it's a fight amongst the other teams. Washington needs to win out. They've lost too many games to bad teams along the way. Detroit's lost a couple of heartbreakers. Penguins' point streak continues. Sidney Crosby's willing this team into the playoffs, and I think Philadelphia's goose is cooked, even though they're only a point behind. They got to win. It's not going to be easy. Like I said, Washington, Philly play each other. Detroit's got some tough games coming up. Washington's got tough games coming up. The Islanders really control their destiny, and so do Pittsburgh. And remember, Pittsburgh this time last year, similar position, lost to teams they shouldn't have. That allowed Chicago to get Bedard. That allowed the Panthers to get in the playoffs and go on their run. So I think they know what it takes to get in. The Western Conference, a little more interesting than it should be because of Vegas's loss the other night to Edmonton. St. Louis is only a couple of points back now. And, if they beat Carolina, they're only a point back with a couple of games to play. But if they lose, and Vegas gets a point here and there, I think it's over. And I think Vegas gets in just because they have too much firepower. And let me just talk about Vegas for a minute. Okay, if you guys saw my Twitter account at Jim Biringer earlier in the day, a lot of people complaining. We see Mark Stone practicing. He's cleared for practice, but he's not in the lineup. He'll probably be back for game 1 for Vegas, unlike Gabriel Landeskog, who probably won't be back the rest of the year for Colorado Avalanche. But everybody's complaining about LTIR and what they're doing. Kelly McCrimmon is just laughing in your face because the team that he's built, the man understands the CBA. You can't complain about what Kelly McCrimmon is doing. You should be complaining to your GM if you're a fan. Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you using the same system to your advantage to improve and stay competitive every year or replace players that you don't need? That's what a smart GM does. Goes and finds the loopholes and gets it. You got Hurdle there. Look, the new contract, Noah Hannafin, new 8-year contract extension. They acquire him at the deadline. Shout out to Kevin Weeks, who first reported it the day after. And then, it was no surprise that he was going to stay there. He loved it. Takes less money than he would in Calgary. No state tax, but he's filled in nicely. He's a number 3 there. Probably Anthony Manth's gone. Chandler Stevenson's gone. Alex Martinez is gone. The real question is Jonathan Marchessault. Can they get the money to work there? So a lot of questions around Vegas, but I think they get in, and they're going to be a tough out for anybody who they play. Again, you look at these divisional races, Carolina, Rangers still got one for Metro, Boston, Florida. The odds were high. I saw on the Seneca Sportsbook for Boston. I thought that was way too high with Florida just 1 point behind them. And then Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg still battling it out. And I think this is Dallas's year to win the Central Division, and I think that would be good, but the reward's probably going to be the Nashville Predators, unfortunately. But hey, that's a great rivalry game for them, and it feels like it's their year. Edmonton's playing differently this year. The race for the Pacific is on. Like we said, it's great playoff races this year. It's been great playoff races, and that's something that you want with the National Hockey League. And, every division's up for grab. The playoffs, play-in playoff type games. This is what you want when it comes to the National Hockey League. This is what they wanted when they made this format. And we may hate the format, the divisional format. Good team's going to be going home. But guess what? It doesn't matter. You know why? Because fans are watching. Fans are tuning in. That's why the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best. And you say to yourself, okay, so what else do they need? I don't think they need anything else. We don't need to expand the playoffs. We don't need to do that because, again, I'll repeat myself too much here, but when you have games this close, all eyes are on certain games, right? There's a big slate of games, but everybody's focused in on the Islanders, Pittsburgh. Where's Detroit playing? Where's Washington playing? Where's Philadelphia playing? And then in the West, where's Vegas playing? Where's St. Louis? Those teams matter. Positioning matters. Home ice still matters as much as it doesn't matter, as we've seen in years past. So again, the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best. No need to expand them. And if the Pittsburgh Penguins somehow get in, I think Sidney Crosby's got to be up for the Hart Trophy. I mean, look, watch Austin Matthews Tuesday night, New Jersey, AM 34, man, up to 68 goals, could be up to 70 by the year's end, maybe more. Could be up for a Hart Trophy. Kucherov up there as well. 50 points clear of the next guy on his team, 141 points. Nathan McKinnon continued to put up points as well. Connor McDavid, I know he's out right now, could assist away from 100. Kucherov up to 100 assists. I mean, unbelievable. And Crosby, again, more milestones, 1,000 career assists. So many things to watch, so many things hard to vote on. But, again, big stories coming out of the National Hockey League. The Arizona Coyotes on the move. And that's the big topic here of the Full Press Hockey Podcast, Full Press NHL Podcast. Get it. iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Podbean now up on YouTube. Full Press Hockey Podcast. Please subscribe. Stay notified of the latest podcast drops. You can get it Northeast Streaming Sports Roku channel, Spitball Sports on Facebook, Mad Radio Sports, TGI Sports Talk as well. Guys, again, my name is Jim Biringer. Please follow along. Please support the channel. Get it, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. I am the voice of Full Press Hockey. This has been the Full Press NHL Podcast. Take care, enjoy, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.